Hello everyone, welcome back to the Analyst for 20th February 2025, where we'll be discussing 7 most important articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express for your UPSC preparation. In the first section of analysis, we'll be discussing regarding the India's insurance sector, the various issues and the need for reform in the same regarding the recent committee that has been set up. In the next one, we'll be looking into the report of Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure on our telecom sector, and we'll be also looking into the way forward in this matter. In the second section pertaining to simplified articles, we'll be looking into 5 more articles where we'll be discussing them with the perspective of upcoming prelims 2025 examination. So stay tuned. So guys, we have only 94 days to the 2025 prelims examination. So I hope that all of you are preparing very well and also pushing your limit right now, because we have only 3 months, around 3 months to the prelims examination. With that perspective, we will be trying to discuss today's article with special focus on the various important aspects and concepts that are needed for prelims and also for mains too. Now, in the very first one, recently, the IRDAI, the insurance regulator of our country, has set up a 7-member committee to review the various recommendations that need to be taken to reform the Indian insurance sector. And here, this is a very important article pertaining to India's insurance sector, because it is almost always in the news. Recently also, for the previous 2-3 months ago, it was also in the news. And when it pertains to our syllabus, we have to look into from the perspective of economic and social development in prelims, where there can be various government initiatives pertaining to insurance sector. There can be some important terms such as insurance penetration, insurance density, and also the recent data regarding India's insurance sector. We also need to factor in GS2, where we have the aspect of health, and here, when we talk about insurance and health, they are sometimes directly related too. Also, when we talk about the vulnerable sections of the populations and the various government schemes that the government has taken for their upliftment, it becomes also very important for us to study this. Also, in GS3, we have the topic of inclusive growth, which simply means that we have to take all of the sections of the populations together when we talk about economic growth and development. Within this, insurance sector is very important. When we start with this, we'll be starting with the very basics, because I know that we all need to revise for our prelims examination. So let me just put it all in very simple terms. When I try to define insurance in our context, it generally means that it is a contract between an insurance company and a policyholder, in which the insurer pays the policyholder for financial losses. Imagine that I am running a particular company, and due to various disasters, maybe due to various losses, I may need to shut down the company later, or there can be unforeseen losses to my company due to global crisis. So who will be bearing these unexpected losses? So it will be maybe an insurance company. Or imagine the cases of various persons who want to take a health insurance or a life insurance to actually secure their future in case of any unforeseen events or unfortunate events that are going to take place. So in this case, the insurer, such as these peoples, will be paying the money to a particular company, and this company will be pulling in all of the people's funds in one altogether fund, which will be catering to the emergency needs of those people who will be needing emergencies, right? In India, the Insurance Act of 1938, which is a colonial era act, is governing all the types of insurance that can be offered in the country, how insurance companies should be operating, the various rules, regulation standards, and also the rules for various insurance agents who will be selling the policies, right? We have some member of our family, right, or our relatives who is an insurance agent, right? We know how they are also operating, how they actually depend on the insurance sector for their livelihoods too. Now, when we talk about the regulation of the entire insurance sector in the country, it is actually done by the IRDAI, that is the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India, which was set up under the IRDAI Act of 1999. So IRDAI is actually having the ambit under this act, and also the various regulation functions it needs to perform in order to dispense its functions, it is deriving the same power from 1938 Act. So here it is the insurance regulator of our country in the same way that the RBI is regulating the monetary policy of our country, right? So it is actually the overall watchdog. It will be looking into the various cases of grievances. It will be looking into the various new policies, or say what else we can do to improve the insurance ecosystem in the nation. Also, right now a recent committee have been formed. Before that, I want to give you some very basic data and numbers as to why we are talking about this sector in the very first place right now. Now we have to understand, appreciate this fact that India is actually, when we talk about the insurance market, it is ranked 10th in the world. But when we talk about the actual performance based on 2021 figures, let me tell you that according to 2021 figures, we had 4.2% only insurance penetration, which means this is the total number of premiums when it is calculated as a percentage of our GDP, right? When we talk about the global average, that is 7%. And when we talk about 2021-22 figures, it is only 4.2% in the country. That means many people in the country are maybe not paying the premiums in the country because they do not even have the insurance that they will be paying the premium for, right? So that means that in India, the insurance coverage is quite low. And here, let me tell you, over the subsequent years from 2021, 2022, 2023, 24, for the last 2 years, this insurance penetration has declined in the country. Now it is only at the rate of 3.7%. Next, when I talk about insurance density, which is actually the total ratio of the insurance premiums to the total country's population. So this is what is indicating that, here when we talk about the entire population of the country, they are only paying a premium at an average rate of $91. This is 2021 data again. But when you compare it to the global data, global figure, it is at $874, which is quite higher. That means also when we talk about the coverage per population, that is also quite low. Right now, over a period of time, it has increased to around $94-$95 as of present year. But again, we find that that is quite low. That is even lower than 1/8 of the global average. Also, we have so many types of insurance. We have cyber insurance, we have health insurance, we have general insurance, we have so many other forms of insurance in the country. But in India, it is the life insurance which is capturing 76% of the market. That means that there are other opportunities also in health insurance, in other aspects of insurance, in other types where we can diversify. So that is why, according to a Swiss study report, it is told that India can be attaining the 6th largest insurance market by 2032. Because as we can see, when we talk about India and the emerging markets, India's growth of insurance market is quite low. But when we talk about the CAGR, that's compounded annually growth, growth rate, which is when you compare each year and the total increase in insurance membership premiums, right? So we take that it is actually one of the highest countries, or fastest countries, which is growing over a period of time. But here we need to talk about the issues first before I actually go on to the committee recommendations. See, there are many committees which are set up in the insurance sector because there are various issues in this particular matter. Firstly, when we talk about government policies, there are various government policies, and one of them is the taxation aspect, where we have around 18% of GST which is implied on insurance premiums. We know that health insurance or any other kinds of insurance are already a little bit expensive for those who cannot afford it. But on the top of it, you add a GST of 18%. So that is why there have been many sections of the populations, many experts who have been telling that let us reduce it to 5%. If at all you have to levy GST, so let you levy at the lowest rate that is possible to make it more affordable. But as of now, even in the present budget, the government did not talk anything about this. Secondly, when we talk about the insurance sector in the country, it is mainly the public companies, or say the government aided companies or institutions, which are far more prevalent and much more popular rather than a private sector. But when we talk about the efficiency, it is generally the private sector which is much more efficient, right? Be it the capital which the private sector is having, it is much more superior with which, for example, the new insurance corporation or the LIC that is having. Now here in this matter, we have to understand with reference to capital, with reference to level playing field, and also with reference to the various payments. For example, the LIC mixed with agents, right? for any payments for any services of the agent, the LIC is actually deducting the tax deducted at source, right? Later they can claim it when they are filing their ITR returns at the end of the financial year. But for the timing, they are receiving some payments and which are deducted with reference to the TDS. So this is where we have to appreciate the fact that this is causing some issues to the insurance agents too, for the public sector insurance companies, where the same thing here is not seen in the private sector. They make their payments in full without deducting the TDS in some of the cases. And also when we talk about the insolvencies or the debt that they are operating with, that is also quite unsurmountable in various cases, right? So this is what we have to understand. In India we have around 26,000 insolvencies, or say the debt which is pending at the corporate level here, and also at the public and the private sector level here. So this is quite high. This is the amount which is being stuck due to various issues. When we also talk about an issue known as the missing middle, we have to understand that of all eligible persons in the country, some persons are covered under Ayushman Bharat, some are covered under central government health insurance schemes, some are covered by private health insurance schemes, some are covered by their employee state insurance scheme, and so many other things. But there are 40.5% of Indians who are not at all covered by any insurance schemes, right? Even not under Ayushman Bharat. So this is the missing middle, where we have to understand this fact that these are the people who belong to the lowest strata of our population, the lowest socioeconomic class of our population. So we have to target them, right? Also, when we talk about micro insurance, this is actually the type of insurance which was clarified by IRDAI in 2015. That's insurance amount or compensation less than 2 or equal to 2 lakh rupees will be classified at micro insurance. This is actually targeted for better inclusive growth. For example, these are targeted towards migrant workers, towards rural laborers, towards informal sector workers. So this is actually trying to ensure those peoples who are not having a formal insurance at extremely low costs. So that is also something which we are having issues with reference to spread of awareness, or we have to actually work on the implementation of the schemes. So that is not going to take place very soon. Also in the comment section, can you let me know of 2-3 examples of micro insurance schemes in the country? After this, when we talk about the issues at the micro insurance level, we also have to understand that there are many schemes which do not take into aspect or cover of the disaster issues too. For example, one example that I can give all of you is the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. Fasal Bima Yojana is that particular government scheme in which the state government, the central government is partnering with various commercial banks, with various insurance companies to give the insurance to the farmers. But in this matter, the insurance companies are playing very bad and dirty games, that in cases of any crop losses due to disasters, they're classifying extreme micro details. They're trying to deny those funds which must be given to those peoples, right? That is leading into much more delays in claims and so on. Particularly when we talk about disaster coverage, that is also something that we have to work on. Also, when I talk about this delay in claims and discounts, right, that means that insurance companies are like strict parents. They ask hundreds of questions before we try to claim something, right? Due to which that leads to many delays. And one of the things that we have to attribute is it's to the heavy amount of discounts that they give. For marketing purposes, for popularity purposes, the insurance companies give a hefty amount of discounts to the consumers. And this brings down the price of the various items of the insurance products. And this leads to a tendency, a culture of delaying the payments when the people actually need the money, right? So this is some cost-cutting measures that they're doing at the discount stage, due to which the consumer is suffering later on. And also when we talk about the other issues which are very common issues, firstly, there is a lack of technological adoption when we talk about our own LIC, our own new insurance companies, right? So also due to multiple amount of frauds and mis-selling. For example, many LIC agents also try to commit some frauds with people, right? They take the premium, they do not deposit the premium with the LIC, and later the total insurance is cancelled for that particular person due to that agent, right? Also, when we talk about the healthcare inflation in the country, right, that is more than 10%. right? We know that inflation can be classified as food inflation, education inflation, service inflation. So according to that only, we have healthcare inflation too. In India, healthcare is one of those services which are increasing at one of the most fastest rates in the entire world. So also with this, we have the prices of the premiums which are increasing over a period of time and raising questions on the affordability of these programs. And also when we talk about the macroeconomic factors, they are also quite, important, because we have to understand that LIC or any other insurance companies are pooling the funds and they are not keeping the funds with themselves. They are trying to invest these funds in mutual funds or in some private companies or in the rest of the world. Let me tell you, in India, the President of India is the largest domestic institutional investor in the country, right? And that is where we have to understand that, according to official sources, there are around 11 stocks that our president has invested in, via the various, schemes, right? And also here, it is via the LIC that this investment is actually being possible, because they invest in so many market instruments. Suppose there is a global issue, there is a financial crisis. So in those cases, due to various macroeconomic factors, due to inflation, the profitability is also hurt. So that is why we have right now the Dinesh Khara committee, where he has given so many recommendations. He was earlier the chairperson of the State Bank of India. So he is an expert in this matter. So he, along with his various colleagues, he recommended various things here. So the first thing he noted, and he is actually instructing the government, is that, the government now wants the entire legal code, right, of the country to be remaining purely within Indian culture and within Indian legal system. So we have inherited this 1938 Act, right, from the colonial times, from the British. So we have to share that dependence. Firstly, repeal that act, right? For that matter, we will be introducing a recent bill in the parliament, which will be containing obviously the features of this act, but with a new name, just like the new criminal laws that we have, right? One more important thing that he is suggesting, that in India, the health insurance needs money for better competition, for better products, for better innovation, due to which we can increase the present level of FDI from 74% to 100%. Let there be more foreign competition, let there be more foreign investors in our LIC, which will be bringing in better stakeholder consultation. Next, we can also give composite licenses. For example, if there is a particular company who is selling only health insurance, it is not that they are only selling health insurance and they will be forever selling only health insurance. Let us also try to diversify their products. For example, they can sell health insurance, they can sell general insurance, they can sell cyber insurance, they can sell so many other things also. Next, also for various insurance types, for various companies, for private public companies, we must be having a particular amount of capital requirement, because capital requirement is very essential for the entire insurance industry to operate on, with reference to some rules, standards and regulations. Next, we have seen there are around more than 20,000 crores of insolvency dues which are pending, the debt which is pending with this industry. So we have to solve this also better. We have to implement the IBC code here very properly, and particularly when we talk about the interest of this sector, we have to keep these norms of this particular code quite lenient also. Next, we have to also introduce the aspect of captive license, which generally means that a particular company, a private company, right, needs to take various insurance products. So why not that private company makes a subsidiary of that particular company itself and gets the insurance from that subsidiary. So it means that the risk stays within the business only, and if at all there are some profits, it can be made by the subsidiary, and finally it can be made by that company itself. That is actually meant by captive license. This same concept is also there in the captive coal mines, which means that there are certain coal mines in the country operated by the private companies who use the coal for their own power generation, and later if they want, they can sell some excess coal in the market for some profit too. The same concept is here. Next, there should be a one-time registration for various intermediaries such as brokers, such as insurance agents, so it will be much more easier for them to enroll. Also, we can let the insurance company diversify to other products such as mutual funds, right? Because they are financial experts, they can also design these products. So mainly the way forward is, firstly we'll be implementing the recommendations, right? Secondly, we have to increase the affordability. Maybe we can reduce the GST here. We can make it much more attuned to our own, say various strata of our population. Next, we have to improve the implementation of various existing insurance schemes, such as the Awaaz Health Insurance Scheme, the Pradhan Mantri Arogya Yojana under Ayushman Bharat, and the various state-specific scheme also, right? So here we have to implement it properly. We have to also appreciate the role of technology such as artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, where the frauds can be reduced, where the premiums can be actually be tried to be regulated within a particular band. Particularly when we talk about diversifying, we can let companies diversify to other types also. For example, cyber insurance, which is looking into all-round safety of your cyber products, digital products too. We must be also trying to promote micro insurance, because as of now, when we talk about micro insurance, some of the insurance products are also given by private companies. So when we look at the trend, insurance trend, it is increasing over a period of time. That means we have that missing middle, remember? So that 40% must be tapped into by the private sector by offering lesser premiums under government regulation. And also we have to introduce parametric insurance, which is by calculating an index generally during disasters, right? And if at all, for example, if there is a flood in the country and we told that there is a particular centimeter of rainfall above which, if it is going, we have to automatically give people the money under these terms of insurance. So a parametric insurance must be encouraged. At the end, I have a mains practice question for all of you. Please do practice this, right? You do this in the introduction. You can actually talk about the evolution of the insurance sector in the country that started with the nationalization, right, of the insurance companies, right? That means all insurance companies were actually nationalized to form LIC in 1956. We can talk about later on IRDA was formed, and subsequently we have such amounts of changes. Also, we can talk about the breakdown of the insurance sector into public and private insurance, right, within which we have life insurance and general insurance, right, under the public sector, within which we have so many insurance agencies too. So with this matter, now let us try to solve this 2020 PYQ pertaining to cyber insurance. Let me the answers in the comments. In the next one, it is about a recent report by the CDRI, or Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, which is actually an initiative by the government of India itself. Our Prime Minister only conceptualized the formation of CDRI. I will be coming to this in a very short while. So right now this report is telling that in our country, right, the telecom towers, which is weak, right, which is extremely weak and more prone to earthquakes, right, to floods, right, in mainly the coastal systems. So there, these telecom sectors are those assets we need to protect from the disasters. That is where we need to increase our disaster resilience in these cases. So here this is very important for our prelims, where we have to look into economic and social development, and also for GS3, where we have to talk about infrastructure, where we need to talk about the telecom sector too. We have to talk about environmental conservation too, right? And also we have to talk about disaster and disaster management, mainly the concept of disaster resilience here. When we talk about a formal definition of disaster resilience, it is meaning that it is the ability of individuals, community, organizations, and also the states, right, to adapt to and recover from hazards, shocks, or stresses, mainly the disasters. So it is the ability of various stakeholders to adopt and recover after a disaster, or also when we talk about, say, a particular community, right? So let me take an example here and explain to you. In May 2019, a terrible disaster, that is a cyclone Fani, struck Odisha, where we have to understand this was one of the most strongest cyclones that took place in Odisha for the last 2 decades. And this was actually, the storms here, the winds here reached more than 100 km per hour, 150 km per hour too. So we can understand the intensity. So, but here what we have to understand, because Odisha government practiced disaster resilience, it tried to build many banks across the various coastal communities. It tried to evacuate people well ahead, because it had well established amount of early warning systems that were put in place, such as satellites, radars, and various other instruments such as weather prediction, to accurately understand when and how powerful the particular cyclone would be. So that is where, under this, we have to understand, we have to appreciate the efforts of the Odisha government back then, because they understood what disaster resilience was. And now when we talk about the determination of disaster resilience, here mainly we have to understand the first thing is quantitative disaster resilience. This is actually mainly, maybe we'll be forming an index, we'll be having a baseline resilience indicators for various communities, where this will be helping us to quantify what is the damage of the disaster, or what is the potential damage, what will be maybe the potential economic losses, and various aspects, maybe what is the funding that we need for the same. Apart from this, there is also the qualitative, determinant of the disaster resilience, which is actually understanding and compiling on the knowledge of the disasters and how, for example, in this case of Odisha. So if Odisha government is basing with reference to qualitative disaster resilience, it means that the government actually had the knowledge, experiences, and also the various out of the way innovations that they did to reduce the human loss. Correct. After this, we have to also look at the risk mapping, zone mapping, where disasters are much more prominent. So accordingly, we can, try to have human settlements there or not, animal settlements there or not, right? We have to also assess the vulnerability of the future aspects. For example, say in the state of Uttarakhand, there are more new vulnerable areas where, the GLOF can occur. So that is where we need to understand and map the region and also understand the vulnerability. And finally, we also need to be aware of how capable we are, right? When we are trying to solve a disaster or get over a disaster, prevent a disaster, we need to be properly skilled, equipped over a period of time. That is what is the importance of capacity building too. In accordance to disaster resilience, right, we also have the Sendai framework, which outlines 7 global targets that must be achieved by 2030. Right, so these targets have been divided into 2 ways. Firstly, some targets where we have to do reductions, some areas where we have to do improvements, right, or increases. So with reference to reductions, firstly, we must be reducing disaster mortality, deaths by disaster. We must be reducing number of people affected by disaster, that is, the vulnerability aspect. We also have to reduce the direct economic losses in relation to the GDP, and also reduce disaster damage to critical infrastructure and disruption of basic services. So this is where we will be discussing the importance of the telecom sector, and here what is the critical matter is pertaining to this telecom sector. After this, there are some increases that we must be doing. There's increasing the number of countries with national and local disaster risk reduction strategies. We must be also trying to substantially enhance the international cooperation for the developing countries and increase the availability and access to multi-hazard warning systems, early warning systems. So please do remember these 7 frameworks, because this was asked in your PYQ of your mains in 2024 itself. So Sendai framework is extremely important when we talk about disaster resilience, and right now this organization we have to talk about, because this is the thing which has released this report. The Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. In 2019, our own Prime Minister floated the idea of let us have the Coalition Resilient, an organization where we have to look into some of the vulnerable countries, such as the small island developing countries, which are mainly located in the Micronesia, Polynesian regions, in Pacific Ocean, and also there are many countries in the Atlantic Ocean also, which face the threat of sea level rise. So it was mainly this idea. Later on, to also protect the coastal communities from sea level rise, to also look into the various infrastructure which we must be supplying to the developing countries, and also the developed worlds must be collaborating in this matter. So this is the way in which this was conceptualized as a mission to increase awareness and commitments of the governments, to increase the availability of knowledge systems and increase the availability of technical assistance, right? So here we have to understand, here there are not only the countries which are present, the UN agencies, the multilateral development banks are there, private sector is also there. The main thing is to promote the resilience of infrastructure system, because during disaster, obviously we understand that is the threat of loss of lives, that is the most important thing. But over that, the loss of roads, the loss of railways, the loss of telecom sector, the loss of power sector is also one of the most important thing that degrade the quality of life during disasters there. Also, this infrastructure, when it pertains to disaster, that helps us to overcome later also, the ill effects of disasters too, right? So that is what the main, mission is here. Here we have as of now, around 40 nations plus 7 7 organizations, the main role that this function is funding, technical support and capacity building. Now here for our prelims examination, which is upcoming soon, right? Here we have to keep some initiatives in mind. That is done by the CDRI. So here we have the Infrastructure for Resilient Island States, DRI Connect Platform, International Conference on Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, Infrastructure Resilience Accelerator Fund. So using our common sense, we can understand there is a common term which is there, which is known as resilient. So by this only we can understand this is an initiative of the CDRI. Now, looking at the curious case of telecom disasters, where not only monkeys are present, right, in India, right, we also understand apart from this issue, there are serious issues of weak infrastructure of our mobile towers, right? Firstly, when we talk about, telecom networks, right, and why they're so important during disasters is firstly, imagine a situation of cyclone or a tsunami in a particular area of our country. May God forbid that. But imagine the situation that people are stuck there. The only way of their escape is via social media, is via calling their family and relatives in rest of the state, maybe rest of the country, by letting others know that they are safe or they are having some issues. So communication is the most important thing nowadays in 21st century. That is why mobile towers are so important. Also, when the government starts its rescue operations, the army, the various police operations, the civil society organizations which are involved, they use mobile phones, they use communication networks, right? Also, when we talk about the early warning system, imagine a situation when a flood is going to take place. That is why the IMD has alerted all the farmers that a flood is going to take place. So you prepare accordingly. The farmers will be receiving this SMS, right, or some alert on social media. That is why the mobile towers are important, right? So that is why we have to understand and appreciate their importance here. But they are also vulnerable because we have to understand these are physical infrastructure. Right? Any physical infrastructure over a period of time, they will be facing depreciation, they will be facing wear and tear, they will be facing some loss in value, they will be facing issues with reference to integrity of their structure, right? So due to winds, due to aging infrastructure, so it will be affected because we have sensitive equipment such as cables, such as electronic items here. When we also talk about the power sector, electricity is also supplied from the power sector to the telecom sector, because without electricity, without power sector, they cannot operate at all. So during disasters, if the power supply is fluctuating, your mobile tower sectors will also be fluctuating. That is why they are one of the most vulnerable here. Also, when we discuss this question, how are telecom networks affected by disaster? Firstly, by physical damage, right? Here, this will be causing network disruptions. Internet speed will be affected in those areas. Power failure is a possibility I just discussed right now. If the power is failing due to disaster, due to cyclone, which also took place in Odisha back then, right, during Fani. Also during Amphan, it was seen in Kolkata, where the power was not there for almost 1 day or 1 to 2 days in a major city like Kolkata. Right, where due to power failure, even the Jio, Vodafone and the Airtel SIMs were not working properly. People were not able to contact with the rest of the world and let others know. Right, so this shut down the telecom towers altogether. Also, when we talk about the network congestion, it is very slow and overloaded, cannot even cater to the people. That is why telecom sectors, right, we may take it lightly, we may not imagine the situation, but each and every part of our infrastructure is important. And here we are discussing telecom, but let me tell you, each and every part of our infrastructure is important when we talk about disaster resilience, because the better amount or the quality of infrastructure that we have, the better that country, that particular state will be able to recover from any mishap that is taking place due to any disasters in the country. So that is why the article is offering some solutions, some easy solutions when it pertains to the telecom sector. So how it can be made more resilient? Firstly, by strengthening towers, right? In this case, we have to repair the towers. We have to make or say install new towers right now. For all on each of the towers, we need some backup power generation too, right? We have to improve the infrastructure. For example, we can actually advocate this dig once policy. That means that if we are building a road, for example, right? We are building a road, we are building a highway. So cannot we install the fiber optic cables along this road construction only underground itself? right? For example, this also took place in the Indian Railways, right, during 2000s decades, early 2000 decades, when the new railway lines, whenever they were being expanded, so we were laying broadband cable too. So this means we are digging only once, but we are solving so many problems. We are also improving the physical infrastructure, that is the road, highways, transportation and so on. We are also trying to lay the telecom sector also here. So that is what we should be keeping these minds, such as these important keywords. Okay, now next, when we talk about financial protection for telecom companies, right, we can take the help of parametric insurance that we discussed in the previous article, right, that according to disasters, according to the severity of the disasters, there must be a particular threshold. If that threshold is breached, we have to immediately give people the money for insurance, right? We cannot keep them waiting for months and months and months, right, as the insurance people do, right? Next, we must be trying to restore power supply as soon as possible. For example, again the case of Odisha government, where it provides 50 liters of fuel per tower. So it, apart from the power generators, we can also have 50 liters of fuel power or kerosene or whatever will be driving that tower for some hours at least till help comes. Next, better disaster monitoring and response must be there, where we can use some software that can track real-time outages in the country, where this can be connected with the national electricity grid also, which can be monitored by the Ministry of Power too, to better coordinate the issue and send help as soon as possible. And obviously we need better amount of ministerial and departments coordination in this matter, right? So here we have a practice question for all of you, and this is a question which I was talking about, 2024 PYQ. This is talking about what is disaster resilience, how is it determined, and describe the various elements of disaster resilient framework. Also mention the goals and targets of the Sendai framework. So in this one, you can let me know 2-3 of your own opinions here. So we'll be moving on now to the simplified articles. According to the United States National Snow and Ice Data Center, we have a very concerning thing pertaining to our global ice. So this is very important for prelims, where we have to talk about climate change, and also for GS1, where UPSC has straight away written about the various geographical features, their location changes in the critical features, and generally we have to also consider the ice caps. So let us start with the very article here. So when we talk about this article, this is talking that the global sea cover, ice sea cover has reached a new low. Now when we talk about sea ice, what we generally mean, this is the ice which is over the sea water. This is not glaciers, icebergs, ice sheets or ice shelves which are generally present over land. So it is generally the freezing of land which results in this landforms. But when it concerns the sea ice, it is generally the sea ice which is, or say ice which is formed above sea water or due to the freezing of sea water, right, in this manner. And also if you can see here, it is only not the ice that we have, but also various bacteria and various microorganisms that we can find here too. So it is important for the prelims too. Now here when we talk about here, how does the sea ice change during winters, during summers, and we have to understand here, during winters, the sea ice increases over these particular areas of Arctic and the Antarctic region. During the summers, naturally we understand the global temperatures rise during the summers. That is why the sea ice decreases here during the summers. But there are some regions, right, which are perennially under sea ice cover. Can you let me know which are these regions generally? So here you will be needing to factor into geographical knowledge, right? Generally the latitude knowledge here. Now here we have to understand why, what has generally happened in this matter. Look at this particular data. These are this year. For example, the blue is pertaining to 2024-25, right? And this particular green is 2011-12, and the red one is 1981 to 2010. So if you understand earlier, when we start from 1980s to 2011 to present times, we understand the sea ice is decreasing. The extent or the coverage of sea ice over the land, over the sea areas are decreasing. The extended are decreasing, that is millions of square kilometers are coming down. In the Antarctic region itself, from 2014 to 17, in just 3 years, right? The size, equivalent to the country of Spain in, square kilometers, it has been degraded, right? And also when we talk about the Arctic region from 1981 to 2010, there has been 12.2% decline of sea ice cover per decade, right? And this is also we have to understand when we talk about Arctic Sea or Antarctic Sea, the thing is same only, right? While the effect, the effect here, the melting of sea ice, it is actually seen less, right? Lesser in the Antarctic region, right? But the historical trends are telling that the extent is actually, increasing over a period of time, right? The extent of the sea ice cover is decreasing over a period of time. So here, firstly, when we try to understand this further, why is this very important? Why sea ice cover is very important? Firstly, we have to keep in mind that sea ice helps cool the planet because it is having a high albedo effect. It reflects the sunlight, right? It tries to keep the earth cooler. Also, it means that if we have higher amount of reflection of sunlight, it results in lesser global warming. The second most important thing is it is trying to regulate the ocean circulation. It is extremely important. When the sea ice is melting, it is fresh water, and when the fresh water is mixing with ocean water, it reduces the salinity of the water, right, in the ocean. And if the salinity is reduced, the ocean circulation of various nutrients, minerals, and even the currents, they decline, right? It leads into a weaker conveyor belt for various major ocean currents that lie deep down the ocean surface. So for these deep ocean currents, the speed, the intensity slowed down, due to which we see so many effects. We will be seeing so many effects in the near future too. Right? Now, mainly when we talk about the individual causes, firstly, when we talk about the Antarctic region here, experts have suggested that a combination of warm air, warm seas and winds have resulted this decline. Now, when we talk about the Antarctic Sea, that this Antarctic sea ice is particularly more vulnerable to ice-breaking winds because simply we understand the Arctic region. If you look at the Arctic region here is surrounded by land, by various countries. It is less exposed to the ocean waters here. It is less exposed. But Antarctic, if you see all surrounding them, we have oceans. And due to these oceans, we have high velocity of winds, which constantly strike the sea ice and break it down. So even if we find a little bit of global warming, right, which will be loosening the integrity of the sea ice, the winds will be furthering, or say further worsening the condition there. Correct? So it is actually surrounded by ocean instead of continents, and actually they are much more mobile. That's why we see from time now and again, we see some sea ice breaking away from here. It is jokingly said that soon we'll be seeing more ice in the Titanic movie than in the real world. So this is the intensity, because we have more and more warmer air, more warmer waters toward the end of the southern hemisphere summer. So the waters are much more warmer, right? Higher air temperatures also melting the edges of the sea ice. And also for our mapping purposes, we need to keep in mind the various oceans which are surrounding the Antarctic continent, right? And also some of the important seas in this region, correct? So for your prelims, please do mapping too here. Now, when we talk about the causes of this dip in Arctic sea ice, now in Arctic here, we have to understand winter is lasting from November to February, March. So here sea ice remained low because of a delayed freezing around the Hudson Bay, as you can see here. So in Hudson Bay, we had a delayed winter, delayed freezing, due to which the ice is also not being seen in this region, right? Hudson Bay is a very large saltwater body in northeastern Canada, correct? And now this delay also, occurred as unusually warm waters took a longer time to cool down. The waters are also unusually historically warmer. The region also witnessed some storms which broke apart the ice around the Bering Sea here. As you can see here, various interconnected or say dislocated regions are having the cumulative effect of sea ice, which is no longer present in that frequency that we have seen earlier. Also, the same phenomena can be seen around the Bering Sea too. Now the Bering Sea is actually located in this part where we have Russia and the US in the Alaskan region. That is why it is becoming much more thinner and fragile over the years. So these are the various reasons we have to keep in mind. And with this 2021 prelims questions which is pertaining to the distribution of freshwater resources, using this hint, you can let me know of the answer in the comments. Now today there are many articles regarding disasters. So in this one, This is regarding the recent decision by the Home Ministry to sanction a certain amount of fund money to the various state governments, within which we saw Andhra Pradesh got the highest share. Now this is very important for prelims, where we need to look into the disaster, say, framework within our country, and also pertaining to GS3, which is disaster management. Now when we talk about this matter, firstly let us look at the architecture of the disaster management in the country under the Disaster Management Act of 2005. At the central, we know that we have the National Disaster Management Authority, which is a 10-member body chaired by the Prime Minister under the Home Ministry. Very important. Then we have the state government, where we have the State Disaster Management Authority, and where the chair is the Chief Minister with 8 other members. At the district, we also have the District Disaster Management Authority, where you, who will be a future bureaucrat, right, will be chairing as a DM, right, DC, and as a a co-chair, a person where we will be also having the representatives from the panchayat and the municipality bodies too. Correct? So this is the entire structure in extremely brief manner, right? On the other hand, we also have the National Executive Committee, which is taking mainly the executive decisions at the central level. At the state level, we also have that particular committee too. Now when we talk about this fund, always remember that National Disaster Response Fund is actually constituted under Section 46 of National Disaster Management Act of 2005. And here it is only for the emergency reasons, emergency relief, this fund will be given. And generally, this fund has a tendency to supplement the State Disaster Response Fund. Yet at all, the state funds have been spent for various disasters. Now when we talk about the various disasters, they are generally notified list of disasters, where we have fire, flood, tsunami, drought, hailstorm, landslide, avalanche, cloudburst, pest attack, cyclones, earthquakes, frost and cold wave. Remember, heat wave is still not included here. And also, when we talk about the spending of money here, we have to understand this is under the public account here. So for spending purposes, the government does not need any parliamentary approval here. So mainly the sources of funding here is via the finance bill, right, where cess, excise and customs can be levied. If at all the NDRF has been exhausted, the limit has been exhausted, that is the excess amount of expenditures are made by the budgetary resources, right, from the budgetary money. Also, this is subjected to audit based on the CAG, right? Both the NDRF and the SDRF, they are subjected to the scrutiny and audit of the CAG. Also, when we talk about this extremely important matter, that no compensation for disaster preparedness, restoration, reconstruction and mitigation will be given. It is only for the emergency, say, response just after a disaster that the government will be setting this particular fund for, right? Generally what happens, right, when we have this particular fund that is being used, right, it is generally the states who will be requesting the center based on a sectoral amount of damages that the state has experienced after a disaster. Now when this list will be, or say this request will be going to the central government, right, the central government will be scrutinizing it, the Home Ministry will be scrutinizing with, along with various other ministries here. It can be the various pertaining ministries under this particular disaster too. Maybe if it is a case of flood and it has resulted in loss of crops, Ministry of Agriculture will be there. Then a particular inter-ministerial central team will be formed, which will be looking into the various claims here, which will be recommending the various measures and also the affected areas where we should be giving these funds. And finally it will be the National Executive Council, right, who will be giving these funds. It is mainly denoted by the Home Minister, as we can see here. The high level committee headed by the Home Ministry has actually approved various funds, for example for Andhra Pradesh, Nagaland, Odisha, Telangana and Tripura. And how this is fitting into the bigger picture, that is, the government has already given around 18,000 crores to the 27 states under SDRF in 2024-25, right? And also we have to understand the center has released these excess funds, right, mainly for disaster mitigation, correct? So here, when we talk about the significance of this move, the government is trying to have a very swift response, quick response here, and so that the states get timely financial assistance with reference to various issues, because also it has been alleged by the state governments that the center have been favoring some states when it pertains to the disaster response funds. So that is where the timely assistance must be given. Also, federal cooperation must be appreciated in this manner here, because it is leading to a better amount of federal aspect here, because this funding will be supporting those states which has faced floods, flash floods, landslides, cyclonic storms and so on. The funds will be provided from the NDRF with 50% opening balance available in the SDRF here. So this is what we have to keep in mind. And also please do understand that when we talk about the SDRF, very important information. So here the center will be contributing 75% of the funds for the general category states, and also up to 90% for the special category states. In the comment section, can you let me know what are actually special category states? So this is what we have to keep in mind for this article. Now moving on. In this next article here, we have to discuss about the issues that the Bharatmala Pariyojna is facing. So this is important for economic and social development in prelims, and also for GS3, where we have to talk about infrastructure, where it was actually conceptualized that this particular program, this particular project Pariyojna will be leading to better amount of roadways and highways in the country, right, where 34,800 kilometers of roadways should be constructed. So this was actually approved in 2017, and initially it was having a deadline of 2027-28. So here mainly the things which were conceptualized here: to build economic corridors, inter-corridor and feeder routes, national corridors efficiency improvement, border roads and international connectivity for better security too, and coastal roads, port connectivity, greenfield expressways which will be built from scratch. That means this will be totally new projects, and also the national highway development program, correct? So here when we talk about the state-wise length here, the top 5 and bottom 5 states are given here. The top 5 states are Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, UP, Andhra Pradesh, Rajasthan. Then we have the bottom 5 states as Goa, Tripura, Himachal Pradesh, Meghalaya and Delhi. Important for your prelims. Also, when we talk about, say, this particular project here, we have around 8,000 kilometers, right, of length, which still is being under consideration, correct? And also the various schemes which will be constructed here, as we can see here, is the economic corridor which has been given the highest focus, followed by inter-corridors and feeder networks, national corridor efficiency improvement and so on, right? So here the main ambition of the government is to transition our 6 corridors, right, the golden quadrilateral, right, and the other quadrilateral, other corridors that we have, to 50 corridors, to have good amount of highways in the country, right, to actually increase 40% freight on national highways to 70 to 80% freight, because we have the issues in the railways freight due to various delays, also in setting up the national dedicated freight corridors, which we are again facing various delays in, right, and also increasing the less 300 districts which are actually connected by 4+ lane highways to increase to more than 550 districts, right? So this is the main target. This was actually the main target of the Bharat Pariyojna. But as of now, if according to the news which is coming from various sources, so only 76% of the total approved length for the project has been awarded so far for construction, with no new project will be announced soon. So this is the main thing here. So such an ambitious project, such a project which will be increasing India's value in infrastructure, no new project will be taken into consideration according to the Ministry of Road, Transportation and Highways. Why? Mainly because we already have so many delays in the existing projects, right? In the existing projects we have so many delays. We have PPP, with the private sector. There we are facing delays, we are facing legal issues, we are facing contractual issues, due to which the cases are also pending in the judiciary. That is leading to various costs, right? And this is why the fresh projects are not being taken up, right? The length of 10,000 kilometers under National Highways Development Project was also subsumed in this matter, but again this is being stuck. So here, due to delay and the various cost aspects of land acquisition and court issues and so on, right now the project is estimated to be completed by 2027-28, which is within the original, which is around the original time limit itself. According to this, there are other issues also, as we can see here. The CAG has also flagged issues of corruption in the tenders, in the price of the various raw materials to be used in this model, right? So that is what we have to understand. This particular project needs better implementation from a government's perspective. In the next one, we'll be looking into the project Cheetah, the very basics here, and the major concerns regarding the project, because recently, it actually saddens me to say this, that those cheetahs where we have brought from Africa, they are not in a good condition as of now. And we have to understand this author here, I mean the study which has been quoted here, it is also not only talking about the ecologically unsustainable ways in which the cheetahs are living right now, but also the ethical concerns. The ethical concerns that we have actually taken those cheetahs from the homes that were living in Africa, and we have told them to come here in India and live. And this is something which we have not listened to ecological considerations in this matter. Correct? Now, when we talk about very basic facts about cheetah, they are actually in the world right now, there are two types which we find, the African ones and the Asiatic ones. Now, the African cheetah, according to IUCN status, it is vulnerable. The Asiatic, it is actually critically endangered. So, it is actually the Asiatic cheetah. Generally, they are found in Iran, which is facing a higher risk of extinction. Also, when we talk about the African cheetahs, which we have tried to bring in our country, because in India, we have had cheetahs till around 1953-54, during which the last cheetah was shot dead, right? It was actually, India was actually home, a natural home to cheetahs. But due to excessive hunting, preying and so on, we do not have cheetahs anymore, which are naturally found. And even now, if there is a question that cheetahs are naturally found in India or not, so the statement would be actually that they are not found naturally. We have actually bought, from Africa. That is 20 African cheetahs we bought. That is 8 from Namibia and 12 from South Africa, right? And later on, we also seen very instances where the cheetah also, the cheetah mothers, they gave birth to various cubs also. So it is actually kind of a thing that maybe over a period of time, we can get higher population of cheetah in the country, but that is for the future to decide, right? When we talk about some important and interesting facts here, cheetah, obviously we know that it is the world's fastest mammal, but not the fastest animal. Do you have any idea who is the world's fastest animal here? When we talk about the cheetah's speed as the fastest mammal, it can reach up to the speeds of 80 to 130 kilometers per hour, and it is having a mass of around 21 to 72 kilo when we talk about an fully matured adult. Also, cheetahs do not roar. While they can hush, whisper and all those things, they do not roar, right? And also cheetahs cannot fully retract their claws, which generally the cat family they do. And here when we talk about the homes for Indian, the cheetahs where we are brought from Africa, right? This is actually the Kuno Palpur region, right? And also the potential wildlife sanctuaries and their names are important, such as the Shahagar, right, and the Nora Dehi, right? And also we also have the recent ongoing discussions as to whether we can migrate the cheetahs to other parts of the country too, because of the various concerns we are facing as of now. Now, in this study, which was published in the Frontiers in Conservation Science, by the name of delineating the environmental justice implications of an experimental cheetah introduction project in the country. So this project is telling, this report is telling that the translocation is actually resulting in a mortality of more than 42% in the very first phase of the project itself. So almost 40 to 50% of cheetah perished here, right? It also tells that the cheetah here, the cheetahs and the populations there, they're facing a high amount of stress, right? They are in a new environment from their homes, right? They're not at all comfortable in this, according to this study here. Also, it is said that the African cheetah populations are already under pressure. So in Africa, they are already vulnerable, right? So if we bring them to India, where 50% of them have died, so this is something where this is also raising some ethical considerations too. Correct? So this is actually what we understand. This is neither ecologically nor ethical according to this report. That is why we need a better inclusive approach where, the justice and environmental aspects must be calculated too according to this report here. Now here, these are all the protected areas in Madhya Pradesh. For our prelims purposes, this is extremely important. Even if one park, the Kuno National Park, is in the news, right, we have to look into the all other parks too, right, in the state of Madhya Pradesh for for our prelims examination. With this, you let me know what is the answer to this 2012 PYQ. Remember, naturally found. We discussed this, so you let me know what is the answer here. In the last article, this is regarding the progress of Indian electronics sector pertaining to smartphone sectors. It is right now, we have to understand, India is producing smartphones at that important and fast pace at which my dadi is also sending me WhatsApp forwards, right? So this is what we have to understand in India. It is good for the country to have better amount of smartphones productions because it can generate jobs, and also it can lead to better availability of smartphones and affordability of smartphones, where not only my dadi and also various sections of the populations, be the elderly population, be it the various vulnerable sections of the populations, they can use smartphones with a very important mission to drive financial inclusion. For that, the government of India has actually visualized this while ahead, not only to bring in financial inclusion but also to boost Make in India, due to which we have the PLI scheme, which is boosting India's global dominance, right? Where India is actually transforming to become a smartphone export leader, where we have to understand as of April 2024 to January 2025, we have around 1.55 lakh crores of smartphone exports, right? Monthly exports is around 25,000 crores. And also when we talk about the projection for this year, it is projected at 1.68 lakh crores. This is all due to this scheme, right? The various sections of the populations and the critics and the various experts, they all are telling, they're appreciating that the PLI scheme for large scale manufacturing, right, where we have the scheme which is mainly dedicated to boost smartphones in the country, incentive of 4 to 6% on incremental sales. So on whatever incremental sales on a particular period of a base year would be, the government will be giving 4 to 6% of incentives, mainly to target segments such as smartphones and specified electronic components. So here eligibility classifications are there, and the tenure is 5 years subsequent to the base year as from 2019-20. So here we have to understand this scheme has as of now generated around 1,22,613 direct jobs. Each and every job is important here. So we can understand that this particular scheme has having the potential to create so many jobs. Also, as you can see, this has increased the investments by Samsung, Vivo, Foxconn, and so many other semiconductor manufacturing companies such as Winston, even coming from Taiwan. So they have all tried to cash on this particular scheme. But it is Apple who is using most of the scheme here, because we have to understand here, this is a strong push which is given by Apple, which is actually producing smartphones in the country, iPhones in the country, along with its various contract manufacturers. The Apple's contract manufacturer are actually, Foxconn, Tata Electronics and Pegatron, which have received various tenders to manufacture maybe motherboards, screens, semiconductors that will be used in iPhone. So close to 70% of the shipments came from Apple via iPhone shipments here, right? So that is what we have to understand, because Apple right now is trying to diversify away from China due to various supply chain issues, correct? And also as of now, the government has disbursed around $1 billion under this scheme itself, that is pushing around 8,700 crore rupees, correct? With Foxconn, Tata Electronics, Pegatron, these are actually cashing in most of the benefits here. So this is where we have to understand 5 beneficiaries collectively receive more than 98% of the total disbursal. These are Foxconn, Tata Electronics, Pegatron, Samsung, and Peugeot Electronics. So this is where Apple, with its various contract manufacturers, they are trying to boost India's smartphone manufacturing. So with this, I've come to the very end here. You attempt the quiz which is following up. I hope you enjoyed this session today. All the best and best of luck. Please do attempt the questions and you let me know in the comments. Till we meet again, all the best of luck, and thank you.